From the trenches of motorsports and Gearhead Central, this is RealTuners Radio, your all-motor, boosted, and nitrous-fed hour of power. Now, here's your hosts, the Reverends of RPM, the Faction of Traction, John Bewley, Scott Clark, Bill Fowler, Scott Evans, Mark Dahlquist, Mike Perduto, James Short, Tom Sewell, Brian Barnhill. This is RealTuners Radio.
Tonight on RealTuners Radio, we're going to keep with the theme of audience participation right after we remind you that we finally have an online class available the weekend of July 18th and 19th. For $299, you can watch the live stream of our class as we tune a variety of different vehicles. I'll tell you now that we are scheduled to have a 3,000 horsepower capable land speed Corvette at the class to work on, but we'll have other cars as well. You can also attend this class in person as there are still seats available. It's in Royce City, Texas at Pro Tree Racing, home of Daniel Raff and his wicked fast radial tire car. Come join us. It's $550 for 2 full days of tuning and instruction, Q&A, good food, and lots of fun in a relaxed atmosphere. You can check both the online and in-person classes out at realtuners.com/product/DFW or just click on live tuning classes at the top. We hope to see you there. Or just ask us tonight and we can talk all about it. Bringing in the other guys. What's up, dudes? Everybody, welcome back. Good to see you back on a Wednesday.
Hey.
Everybody hi. So excited all at once. You guys realize we're over 3 years doing this. I totally missed our 3-year anniversary because I suck at life. But yeah, we're like 3 years and 2 weeks into RealTuners Radio. Pretty crazy. It's still pissing people off like it did the first day we started.
I'm kind of a noob. I didn't come in until like the first 6 months or so or whatever.
No, you were on it. Everybody here was on it except for Barnhill after the first. I mean, Bewley got on like the 3rd or 4th week. Sewell was me, Sewell, and Jay, and I forget other guy's name from Wichita. God, I suck at life. Zach Freeman. Zach was on it. Yeah, Zach. We were the first, and then Bewley was on like week 2 or 3. And then he's been on almost every night since.
I was about 7 or 8.
Yeah, you were you were, if not sooner. Yeah, I should ask because you and Bewley were both on quick. I'll go back and look. That'd be interesting to hear. It's so funny. You listen to the old shows.
That's where I first met Evans was when I came on here.
Yeah.
And then I took my employee Bill out to Lake Havasu to do some Holly stuff, and then on the way back, we stopped at Vegas, and Evans took us out to Gordon Ramsay's, which was
fucking awesome. That place is so good.
Yeah. And at that point,
yeah.
Well, at that point,
that
I
was
didn't
like
know
2 or 3 months before we ate there.
Yeah, right. That was, or at least, yeah.
But I thought Evan. I didn't know what he did. I didn't know he was like the pro audio guy, and then here we are now doing custom theaters and things and.
Blowing all of our money on home theater, which is cool. Don't get me wrong.
We're gonna blow all our money one way or another.
Exactly. So. Thank you.
Right. First episode I was on was the spark plug reading episode, because I was talking about it in the Mixler chat, and you said, "Oh, heck, we gotta get this guy."
Here. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, "This guy almost sounds like he knows what he's doing," but I was fooled. Just kidding.
But you already knew Evans on various forums before that, though, correct?
I knew that he was the audio guy. I didn't know that. No, I didn't. When he started talking, and then it connected. I was like, "Oh, this guy's been making smart posts on Yellow Bullet for like 20 years or 15 years." But
yeah, we both kind of knew each other's names, but we had never met before that.
Yeah. Just whatever, but it was cool. So, I haven't even pulled up the, I need to pull up the chats here. Sit tight a minute. So what else? Anything new?
Everybody's pretty quiet in the chats.
Yeah. Hold on. Maybe because it's not.
They're probably as tired as we are.
Everybody else beat up and tired? Arguing with guys that are absolutely sure that the Chinese injectors that get thrown away are fine.
It's all just marketing, right? Yeah. There's no reason you pay more for good products.
No, it's all just a,
You know
a big
what?
scam.
We should just call them COVID injectors.
I mean, because COVID actually does something, right? The COVID-19 injector kit. It's so funny because the only guys that are like, these work just fine. They're like, I'm not sure how to test if I have 8 cylinders firing or not.
Once you get a COVID injector, sooner or later it's going to die.
I guess so.
Or is it just going to spread to all the other crappy injectors you have? Is that why? All of the above?
I mean, I think that's what happens because the ones we tested, it like was a spreading disease, man. And Sewell, I know, has been through it where, all right, we started off, one was broken. After 5 minutes of runtime, like 4 of them stopped working. But it's so funny because this one guy, I was like, so I'll tell you what, dude, he's arguing with me about these injectors. We had 12 sets in a row that I've had removed because of problems with the car, either not making power, not running on all the cylinders, or hurting itself. And so this guy's like, there's a couple of slop-tard dudes that are like following me all over the internet, and you can't prove anything, you're lies, and you're bogus. Where have we heard that shit before, right? But so I just told him, I was like, look, you come to my class with your snake eaters in your 1974 C10, which nothing against those because, I mean, Jake Hildebrandt's got a cool one, but you bring that to my class, you pay for the class, $550, and if we can't find power losses or problems with your injectors, hell, I was even willing to pay to get a new set of FIDs in there or something. And if we don't gain horsepower, we can't clearly find that there was a problem, I will give you double your money back. Well, I got to work that day. Really? Because every other Saturday and Sunday, you're posting the shit out on Facebook, right? But you can't get off work. You can't call in sick to make $1,100. Right? Was you carbon on the dyno? No. Oh, but you're sure that I'm wrong. God, I had another one. We had Mr. Super Tuner arguing with me on Facebook just now that cars don't, like, I've observed probably 20 times in 15 years, street strip cars, like Bill's is a good example, and Bill had a couple of friends we did this with. We tuned their engines on engine dynos, and then we put them on the calibrated MD 1750 or whatever chassis dyno, the big roller one that Scott and I both like, where we hung the weights on it, and the engine dyno was, calibrated per, both dynos were calibrated per manufacturer's instructions, and there is a percentage loss number within 3% that every one of the cars we did, and I'm going to classify these as street strip cars, they were drag week cars, right? There was a loss number to the wheels on that combo every time that always was within 3%. And you got Captain Facebook Tuner arguing with me tonight, but he's never, I was like, well, when you took an engine and put it on the engine dyno, and then you put it on, pick your brand of chassis dyno, make sure we know the brand, so we know if it's Bob Marley, if it's entry level, low priced, whatever. But tell us what it did in your experience. And then the guy just completely wants to not talk about that. So I'm like, you didn't actually have the experience, and you're arguing with my observation, albeit it's only 15 or 20 cars. I mean, cars that exist, cars that have won classes at Drag Week for years. But why are you arguing with someone if you never observed that yourself? I guess I don't get it. This is why I don't argue.
If you don't have the empirical data to back up your argument, then there's no point in arguing.
Like Evans, when me and you argue, it's always really good because you're like, hey man, for 5 years I did nothing but this same thing, and here's what I observed. Although ironically, in that particular discussion, you observed the exact same thing that I did as far as the loss percentage to the wheels. Right. Which I think is hilarious. You guys, but these guys are out there telling us and trying to impress the world with, oh, he's not right, that's not true. I'm like, well, dude, it's just my observation. What did you observe? I could totally be wrong. We're only a product of our experience. Maybe the 20 cars I did had magic unicorn dust crammed up their butthole or something retarded. I probably just pissed off 300 different people.
People are just retarded. They just don't believe that a Turbo 400 is a fucking
Bewley,
black hole.
It's
for
funny
horsepower.
you bring it up because you fight this shit more than any of us. Like you are the king of keeping track of people's results.
35 to 40% on a Turbo 400 usually.
Thank you. 37 is what we came up with every time.
I mean, I'm perfectly. I haven't had the back-to-back with you guys on that particular transmission.
No,
but I'll go 30 to 35 all day, every day.
sure.
You know, a Power Glide's not as bad, but if everybody knows
Power Glide's usually about 32, 33.
We came up with 34
Yeah,
and 37, and I'm sure there's some variants in the dynos.
I've seen Power Glides. I've seen two instances where a really, really good Power Glide was in the high 20s. You know, with a converter that wasn't sucking hind tit and was terrible.
I've never seen any transmission in any automatic down in the 20s. I think the closest might have been 29, but everything I've seen is always automatic has been, I mean, maybe, but everything I've seen has always been low 30s. Sticks even are high 20s. You know, I've never seen people go, oh, my stick only takes up 15%, but they're always 25, 27% minimum.
Where the hell is James Short to tell us about his experience here, going from a very efficient manual transmission to a very inefficient slush box?
Yeah, I'm curious. I wish James.
So
was
the
on
cool
here. He's
thing
probably
is
doing
you can tell people that manuals make horsepower, but the automatics eat up all that extra power, but they spit it back out with speed.
Chris Smith, always the wise and sage one. Don't take the bait. Who cares? But Chris, not taking the bait is no fun on social media.
Right?
Have you met Scott?
So I have a good one. Here. Get the COVID injectors. You're going to need a mask because when they lock open and leak fuel, you'll need it to protect from the stink.
Yeah, that's very true.
Man, just talk to any tuners. It's so funny. Anybody who's been using those super cheap injectors and it's like, just nobody wants to work with them. And dude, especially factory ECU tuners, because of how critical it is to have a consistent performing injector and also have the data for that injector and have them match that way. I mean, that's, and I'm not an injector snob. I am absolutely not an injector snob. I'm a blue collar, whatever works injector guy. That's why I've been friends with Tom Sewell forever, because he was the first one I found that just stopped what he was doing to take care of people. Like, I'd send people his way and their expectations would be exceeded every single time. And it's been that way for like 9 years, but whatever. So I'm not an injector snob.
Yeah, that's exactly how I got hooked up with Tom. He was an Ohio guy, and I forget how we even found him, if he reached out to us or we found him and had a question. But yeah, that's the stuff works. He doesn't charge an arm and a leg for it. It's good stuff, and he picks up the phone.
I mean, you can't say enough good stuff about Tom stuff. I mean, you don't need some of the other brands. I mean, I've had Tom stuff do better than some of the other guys out there.
For big bucks?
Yeah, the big buck stuff, the really, really, really big buck stuff, the ones that...
Yeah.
James is here.
James made it. Dude, James, can you talk about...
power losses?
He can't even figure out his microphone yet. It's still muted, but I want to ask James Short, since he's here. Did you... He might even not be able to hear us yet. He's just signing in.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Can you talk about what your wheel horsepower figures were on your car? Of course, you probably had to do them on a different dyno, but did you get a manual trans versus slush box number comparison that you feel is a valid comparison, and what the difference was?
No, I do not, because the only time the car's been on the dyno with the auto is on Haltech's mainline hub dyno, and I never did have that same combo on their dyno with the stick shift.
Did you have the stick shift on any dyno that held it?
No, not really. I had it on my personal dyno here, the Dyno Dynamics, but it wouldn't hook on the power that I was running on. So
yeah. Damn it! I was hoping to see what kind of comparison was. I mean,
James has had some experience with an automatic that blows y'all series kind of out of the water, though, as far as percentages. It's lock converter stuff, though.
No, lock converter stuff was a whole different ball game, man. You get in the teens, in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, a locked 4L60 will show you percentages of a manual transmission.
I also have same guy arguing with me that it's not a percentage, it's a fixed number. It's a fixed horsepower number. Man, I've talked to some drivers.
I know exactly who that guy is.
not how efficiencies work. That's not how physics works.
No,
Well, I don't
yeah.
think it's a fixed number, but I also don't think it's a fixed percentage either. I think it's kind of
it's a
yeah, it
sliding
takes
deal,
so
but
much
it's more
power
of a
to turn
percentage by
this,
far.
but
I mean, I actually talked to the
Yeah,
guys at
and then-
Liberty Gears about this because I had a chance to talk
I mean,
to them.
hydraulic fluid couplings they're a complicated fucking thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
it's
when
never
you
going to be
start
the
talking,
same.
when you start talking about using a fluid to couple a turbine, and a pump, how much power you're feeding it, transfer with blade angles and all that BS. It's above my damn head. I don't try and understand it. That's the reason why I talk to Lane and Dusty about
I know,
that
right?
shit.
Leave
But,
it to the experts. That's why you
know,
never hear
it-
Dusty
it's-
arguing about engine dynos. You know what I mean?
Well, hell, I mean, in your fluid dynamic stuff, if you look at a textbook,
Yes.
they'll give you the equations and the differential equations. I forget what order it is to do the calculation. And they're like, hey, yeah, by the way, don't do this. Here's a chart to use for your.
That's what
your
my
efficiencies and
contact at
percentages."
Liberty said exactly.
Yep.
And they also said, hey,
I mean,
we
I
know
can
a thing
see-
about torque converters, but their answer was, well, does more power put more heat into the system? Oh, does it ever?
Absolutely.
If you watch Trans Temp.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say heat is it's a very good metric because while I was on the dyno up there with my car, I noticed definitely that as the trans temp got hotter, it wasn't showing as much power because it was blowing through the converter more.
Well, yeah. I mean, you heat the fluid up, then its ability to transfer power across the pump and the turbine in the converter goes away.
You should have put some of that there 2050 race oil on that there transmission. She would have tightened right up.
Right?
Get you some of that.
Should done that
fire-
tractor fluid.
That tractor fluid.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is I do have
Which
to
is-
give a shout out to Dusty though, because at 2056 horsepower, the thing was still only slipping like 1.5% at 8,300 RPM or something like that.
Wow.
He got
That
you that
sucker's
big.
gravity.
Just
258,
so
didn't he? That big
just so
258
people know.
bad mamma jamma.
Yeah, 258 's a bad bitch.
Evans, you
just
were
so
going to say
people
something?
know, you can use. I was being polite. I was trying to wait. You can use tractor fluid in your transmission. It'll get you by in a pinch to help tighten something up ever so slightly, but it's hard on the seals in the transmission. It's hard on the parts because it doesn't have any of the lubricants or additives that are made to help your transmission last a long time. So just be prepared to rebuild often because it does some damage to the seals and to the clutches and things in there because it's not designed for it.
And let it have a quarter to a transmission fluid along with the hydraulic fluid too. That way you get some of the additives.
There was on one of the
That's what we
pages I was on, a
usually
guy was looking for a 4L60 to hold 900 horsepower. And I said, well, how many?
There ain't
how
a
many
4L60 that holds 400 horsepower.
I said, how many neutrals do you want?
No, and actually that was somebody really sharp, dude. That was Paul Powell. I don't know if you know Paul
It'll
Powell.
hold 900 horsepower for like a run, maybe.
No. Back
Half
up a
a
second.
run.
Okay.
The guy
one
asking
gear
about
shift.
that. The guy asking about that was Paul Powell, and I don't know if he's listening, but that is a sharp MF. That guy is badass. He is a really good tuner. I don't know what his experience is. Go ahead.
I will say, the 4L60 thing does have a lot of tuning involved there to keep one alive at higher horsepower too. I mean, the guys at RPM Transmissions, they have those things nailed down, to a certain extent.
Yeah, they do.
But the problem with the 4L60, until you get into a later model, at least on OE control logic, they don't have a closed loop slip logic. So, like a 4L80, it's got input shaft speed, output shaft speed. It monitors slip, and it has a certain range that it can increase or decrease line pressure to keep the clutches from slipping, whereas a 4L60 does not. So most of your race applications, like your F bodies, your C5 Corvettes, and your GTO, and some of those cars that came OEM with those style transmissions, do not have an input shaft speed sensor, nor do they adapt pressure for a slip detection. So it's all based on the tuner to get line pressure set for an increased power application. Then you take into fact having to scale tunes and do trickery with the older model ECUs to get, the fueling calculations and stuff correct. That skews the delivered torque, which also completely screws up how much delivered line pressure you get to the transmission. So that's why you see 4L60s creating new neutrals.
What about
More
what
so?
What about 4L60s of the standalone?
They don't either.
Same problem.
The 4L70 is what they technically call it. Came out 06, 07 time frame, whenever they started converting over to the Gen 4 PCMs and separate transmission control module, the T42. Some of those transmissions actually received an input shaft speed sensor, and they actually did line pressure adapt and slip logic. But those are few and far between and never get used in performance applications unless you like building turbo trucks and turbo trailblazers and stuff like that.
Technically, your RPM is your input shaft speed.
Right? No.
It doesn't really need a sensor.
No,
Because
it's
there's a
not.
torque
After
converter.
There's a torque converter between it.
Yeah.
That slips.
Yeah. So you use the input shaft speed, then compare to the output shaft speed and figure out if you're getting clutch pack slippage, right?
Yeah, basically the TCM knows, or the PCM, whichever computer you're using, knows the gear ratios. It knows what gear that you're currently in.
Yes. So it can tell you if you're slipping.
It compares output shaft versus input shaft times or divided by the gear ratio to determine what the slip ratio actually is. Now you can get converter slip if you use engine RPM, but
So hold on. I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly, because my understanding was the converter itself is spinning, but your input shaft is spinning at RPM speed. Your converter does slip. Your input shaft does not. It's got to drive the pump, but that's the physical shaft spins the exact same speed the converter is spinning, which is bolted to your flywheel, which is attached to your engine.
No, if it was one-to-one with the engine RPM, then it would never slip.
Right. Yeah.
The input shaft is driven by the turbine and the stator inside.
Scott's
the
thinking
pump is driven by the stator tube.
I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking something else there.
No. I made that mistake too before. I've looked at
it's been a long
shaft.
day. My brain is fried today.
It happens. I've made that same error. I mean, it's funny. And when you're looking at stick cars, you get into Pro Stock weekend. I got into some of that. Those guys are finally getting ready again, and it's like, oh God. I keep thinking, oh, let's look at engine RPM versus the input.
Yeah, it's not easy to differentiate how the fact that a torque converter can drive two different shafts at two different speeds. Sometimes it can fry your brain to try and figure out how that's possible. But you got to remember, there's a whole complete independent assembly inside the torque converter.
Inside that, I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah, that whole independent assembly that is only turned by the fluid itself that drives the actual input shaft that turns the internals of the transmission. The actual part that the actual outside case only engages the pump drive shaft, so that the pump turns 1-to-1 with the case of the converter.
Any of you all that are training gurus, is it bad to shut the motor off on a clean neutral because it's not technically turning the internal transmission pump whenever the engine's off?
I defer to a transmission expert on that.
If you
got a clean neutral, that's the whole point of having a clean neutral in the transmission, is to be able to do that.
Well, I thought the clean neutral was just to actually be able to go to neutral, not necessarily kill the motor, though.
I thought it was to be able to shift into neutral without fucking up the planetaries spinning 10 times faster.
It's to keep from switching the drum's direction and accelerating it to double the speed of the RPM. Because if you don't do that, but I mean, a lot of people, the only reason you'd want to shut it off would be able to, if you only do it once every once in a while to get a plug reading, it's not a big deal. But most people are doing that with the Spragless converter, and once you go to neutral, the engine's going to drop to idle, and even at idle, you're turning the transmission pump enough RPM to keep fluid moving, to keep from letting it overheat and fry anything.
Are you talking nitrous, Mr. Bewley?
We're talking transmissions, Mr. Perduto. Thank you for joining us finally.
Yeah, no kidding. I saw
Sorry.
you signed into the Facebook chat. I'm like, motherfucker, you get on
I was
here.
driving down the road, you know.
You get your boat lesson done with?
Yeah, my next door neighbor bought a boat for me, and we had to have it wouldn't have been a big deal if the guy doesn't live next door. So he has to be right, or I'm going to hear about it every text message every day.
Or he's going to come knock on the door and be like, hey, Mike, hey, Mike, hey, Mike.
Yeah. I apologize. I interrupted. Continue the conversation.
No, it's all right. Scott Doss, to answer your question, the simple answer is one word. It's called torque. Torque converters are nothing more than fluid couplers. They take torque in and they transfer that into motion. And for a given, blade angle, pump and turbine area relationship between those two pieces and the fluid inside the converter, for a given, you're going to get a given stall speed for a given amount of torque input to the front of the converter. If you change that torque input to the front of the converter into the pump, you're going to get a different stall speed every time. That's the reason why I would like with a turbo car, if you change the boost where you leave at, you can change the flash RPM of where the converter wants to go to when you let go of the button. That torque input number that you give the converter is what's going to change that flash point or that stall point.
I can tell you this: if you spend $6,000 on a 4L60, you might get 600 horsepower out of it before it lets go. If you spend $6,000 on a Power Glide or a Turbo 400, you're pretty much good for as much as you can throw at it.
$6,000. You don't even have to spend $6,000 on a Power Glide. I've got guys.
Right, you spend about $4,000.
Yeah, $4,000. I mean, that $3,500 Power Glide from the $3,500 Power Glide from PTC that I sell a lot of, that 10 clutch drum deal that they've got. I've got guys that are making right at 2,000 horsepower on that transmission, and it's ridiculous. And I've been David Gott, D&J Components out in Southwest Missouri. He's done a couple of transmissions for a couple of customers, cars of mine, and I know a couple of those guys are making north of probably, I know two of the transmissions are seeing north of 2,300 right now, and his Power Glide's only like $4,600, and it's ridiculous.
Yep, and if you
the converter in here, $6,000.
Yeah, if you think about the other challenges, people say, oh, well, I got to have an overdrive for the highway, but you don't if you realize how a torque converter functions, because at lower torque and lower speeds, it couples differently than it does at wide open throttle and every bit of power you can throw at it. And what you see going down the road is really not that crazy if you gear your car correctly. And even if you need to gear it for something like an 1/8 mile and need to make a really, really steep gear, really short gears, you can always throw a gear bender on the back side of it and get back that overdrive.
This is what we've got a back-to-back comparison for what you're talking about there in Jonathan Coleman's drag week car.
Oh yeah,
his new edge that a year ago. Well, 2 years ago, the car had a 4L80E in it with the baddest of the bad shit that you could get in a 4L80E, right? With a lockup converter.
This is a good comparison. Yep.
And the decision was made to get away from the 4L80E to try and get some weight out of the car. So we decided to put a Power Glide, a shorty glide in it with the gear vendors and go to a
That's 260 pounds of difference.
About 100 and I can't remember.
It was with fluid. With fluid on my car going from 4L80 to Power Glide was 265 pounds total between converter, fluids, everything.
Well, I had the gear vendors to that.
The gear vendors and all the stuff that we had. But, I think
that makes sense. Those numbers make good sense. Yep. Okay, go on.
But we did a glide with the gear vendors, and Lane at PTC, we did a 10-inch bolt together with the mechanical diode converter for it, because he didn't want to do a spragless for it. We wanted to do a mechanical diode because of pulling the trailer, and the car is 3,500 pounds, so it's heavy. We were afraid that pulling the trailer on drag week and stuff without a mechanical diode was going to cause some fluid heat issues. Average RPM difference between the two transmission setups was 200 RPM at the same speed, cruising on drag week.
Yep.
So that's basically a nothing burger as far as that's concerned. So, 200 RPM and the ratios, I can't even remember what the ratios worked out to. The ratios in the overdrive were like 0.04 different or something. And then by the time you calculated the ratio difference, the RPM was like down to like 150 different mathematically, because the difference in ratio accounted for 50 RPM of the difference or some shit. So
yeah,
That's
4L80 is
pretty-
a 0.7 overdrive, and the Gearbender is a 0.65, I think.
I don't
And
know.
that's
He's got the Pro Mod one. He's got that big belly badass one. I don't know.
And that's just the difference between the lockup.
0.75 or something.
That's just the difference between the lockup converter and the non-lockup converter. That's 100.
I was gonna say that's pretty kick ass too, considering he's towing a trailer and shit.
Yeah, and his trailer is not small. He's got a big trailer that's loaded down with a lot of crap. And it's fairly significant. I mean, Jonathan's trailer is so well outfitted when they run local. The trailer goes with the car. Like if they go run US 43, he doesn't load the car in the trailer.
They just bring the rig to the track with them. Yep. For testing.
He doesn't. Everything is in his drag week trailer to take the car to the track and run it. So like US 43 is 35 or 45 minutes from their shop or something, if I'm remembering correctly. He just goes and hooks the damn trailer to the car, and they drag the trailer to the track with the race car, make passes, and then take it back to the shop.
That's what a lot of drag week guys do, because not only do you have all your shit together for your whole program like a pro stock team, you're also testing the car that way. That's like Doc McIntyre and Jeff McConnell do. They literally, like, Doc's like, nope, I'm taking the hot rod on my rounds at the hospitals in Kansas City this weekend, and it better not fuck up on me. And it seldom does after years of doing it, which is interesting, but that's the way you get your drag week cars sorted out.
Yep.
Speaking of longevity, John, you see the question about
Bill
ball bearing
Armstrong.
versus kernel turbos?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious what John thinks, so I'm going to let him take the lead on that one.
That's where I'm at on this one.
Yep.
I mean, longevity on something like that, the ball bearing is probably always going to win, just because of the thrust bearing structure with the ball bearings versus the thrusts. In all the time that I've been doing this, man, we've never really gotten into water-cooled center section stuff, just because it's drag cars and not road race cars. Because I don't do cars that go out and run for 20 to 30 minutes plus at a time. So, I mean, the only car that I ever had that had a water-cooled center section was my T-Bird. I took that shit off and bypassed it and got rid of it.
So
because like the first, my first upgraded turbo that I put on that car did not have a water-cooled center section.
So with our talks from Garrett, even on drifting, even when we're hot lapping and some of the road race stuff we do, they said basically the only time they would really be concerned about us not running the water cooling is in endurance racing.
Steady state
You're out to go and you do 12-hour, 24-hour stuff, or land speed where you're in boost for so long and everything's so hot. And even that land speed, I think, would be a case-by-case variation. But
depending on how much air, depending on how much air was available to the engine bay passing over the units themselves.
Yeah,
that's the only reason I could see land speed needing water-cooled center sections, because those cars are so sealed up that there's no ambient airflow around the unit itself to to
Yep.
evacuate any kind of ambient.
Yeah, I have
the
zero
units.
water cooling on my GTO street car, and I would have no problem driving that thing cross country.
The only thing we do, I mean, back in the day, back in the day of all when turbos and stuff got started, it was the turbo timers. Everybody
ran those. Remember that shit?
Everybody that had something,
Oh, man.
that had a turbo timer on the car.
Everyone with a turbo had a turbo timer because you had to have that.
Dude, I sold so many turbo timers back even up through about 2014 or so. I was still selling a decent amount, but I saw them fall off real hard after that.
I mean,
it's kind of funny. I was actually playing with that feature, and Haltech has it built in. If you buy, a Haltech with their harness or whatever, it keeps the ignition relay on and runs the motor for a determined amount of time. But yeah, I guess it's to keep from the oil baking, I guess, in the turbo, I guess.
I mean, and that's a good idea, and that's just something, one of the things that we found out is it doesn't necessarily take as long to prevent that from happening as what everybody thought it took. So, like on my Cummins, if I go out and I beat on it and I pull up and I park the truck somewhere, I mean, is it really all that difficult to just let the truck sit there and idle for 30 seconds before you key it off? I mean, that's what I personally do. That's what I did with, when I was running a truck for a living, my N14s and my Cats, none of those trucks had water-cooled center section turbos on them. And if there's a vehicle that's going to put stress in the center section of a turbo, it's going to be a Class 8 truck, because those trucks are literally in boost every minute of their operation for 14 hours, 16 hours a day. If they're moving, they're making boost to move down the road. So none of those trucks had water-cooled center sections on them. And, we would just pull in and park, and you just sit there and let the truck idle for a little bit, let the oil temperature come down, and let the cooler oil, circulate for a little bit. I mean, that's all that we did with them.
A lot of people don't realize how much cooling overall from everything comes from your oil, which is, doubly why your cooling system being not up to capacity hurts other stuff. But just the oil to your turbo is going to help.
It's a good reason to have an oil temperature sensor, so you can see all that that's going on.
I mean, I know a lot of guys who've been concerned about turbo longevity who have plumbed small oil coolers in line to their turbochargers, and they will literally cool the oil before they go to turbochargers. So, I don't know if it helps or not. Me personally, I think having too cold of an oil going to the turbo is probably just as bad as it being too hot, because we all know what happens when the oil's not up to temp. So, it is what it is.
Refer to the Lake Speed.
Comes down to finding a happy medium.
Yeah, and just
you got to find you need viscosity to be at a certain point for it to actually do its job. When it's too cold, it can't flow well enough to properly lubricate, to properly protect the bearings. If it gets too hot, it gets really, really thin. It doesn't have enough surface pressure to be able to hold a film to make it so that it keeps the pieces apart. You just got to find a happy middle ground.
Right. And Bill, in your case on your car, and if it's your car we're talking about here, a ball bearing turbo is probably what you need to be looking at. You've got a manual transmission car, and the reality of it is, you accelerate and decelerate the turbo twice as much during a pass as an automatic car does. So, you stress a unit harder than other people do. And then, being a manual transmission car, you're a little bit on the undersized of the spectrum for your turbo sizing. So that can kind of, your back pressure might be a little bit higher, and that can cause a little additional stress to the thrust face. If your back pressure's, at a constant constantly high like that. So, yeah, I think for you, a nice ball bearing, non-water cooled would probably be the minimum that I would go to. I really don't think you need a water cooled center section on your car, but I'm not going to say you would not benefit from replacing what you got with a pair of ball bearing units. I know you would probably enjoy the ball bearing units more with that stick in your car.
I was going to say, being a stick shift, if it's going to be drag raced any at all, it's probably going to get hammered, due to anti-lag. That's the hardest thing on turbos.
Paper one, they were ball bearing precisions. Let's get some Garrett's on it and see what we can do with some Garrett's instead. And,
demand letter from lawyers incoming.
And
be a lot safer with a Garrett.
Hang on, John, I have the politically correct way of saying this. Can I?
Go ahead.
Why? Like I care?
Precisions run really, really strong, make a lot of power when they run. The Garrett's going to run tomorrow, too.
The Precision's pro level stuff has worked great for us. The street level stuff has been more finicky. I mean, I just...
Depending on what it is, there are certain turbines...
Yes.
There are certain turbine sections of the Precisions that have just...
That are unhappy.
That are unhappy, and I've never been able to have good longevity out of. The ball bearing 67 is one of those that I have literally had ball bearing 67s have turbine side oil seal leaks on startup.
Is that the one Jimmy Neutron had problems with?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I shipped 2 of those to a customer in Kuwait, and both of the motherfuckers leaked on startup, and he never could get them to stop.
I shipped 3 of them through the housing and through the ceiling at a dyno shop.
And if you crap one and you're not a big name guy, they do not know your name and they will not help you.
Well,
right.
Just maybe. That's allegedly. Jesus.
Yeah,
Bill's not on here tonight. We're fucked.
Hang on.
And it I just don't. I can't recommend a product I can't trust. And just like, and there's certain Precisions I would bet the farm on, and I will trust them. I would trust them, to my dying day. And then there's certain ones you couldn't pay me to put on anybody's car. But there's certain products like that in anybody's product line. And if you do this job long enough and you do things for people long enough, you find out that about every manufacturer there is in this business. Everybody on this podcast knows that.
Yep.
Scott, believe me, no one's saying the GTR 88 is a bad piece. That's a bad son of a gun right there.
The PT88 from Precision, that motherfucker is like a 78 Chevrolet square body with a 354 bolt main in it. You can't kill one.
You're right. It'll spool tomorrow.
They will run forever. You can't hurt the old school PT88. They'll make 950 to 1,000 rear wheel. They're a great turbocharger. They're an all-around great turbocharger. They're old technology. They're not the newest thing on the block, but they feel, they do a really good job. The 7675, that's another one that I would hang my hat on till the cows come home. That chassis, the 75 millimeter turbine chassis, is problem free. I haven't had anybody have any problems out of that one. But the 67 and the 62, I'm gun shy about either of those two models, and I won't. Yeah. I'll go to Garrett on a 67 or a 62.
We run a bunch of JZs and stuff on those, and I've never liked the Precisions. It's always been Garrett.
I've always gone to a GT35 or a GT40 or that GTW 3884.
Yeah, the G25 and G30 are a very solid replacement for that. There's a 2JZ Super we did recently that normally a 3582, something in that range, would have been my go-to on it. And we put it's actually a G25 550, and we still wound up making 720 to the wheels on that turbo before we ran out of turbo on E85. Yeah. So, and that thing spools so quick. It's so nice.
I'm not, like I said, there's just, there's just certain ones that I don't trust. And the 67, the ball bearing 67 is one I can't trust.
Yeah, I definitely think that Garrett in the small and mid range turbo, I guess, depending on how you're talking about the size of your turbos.
58 millimeter to 70 millimeter turbine stuff. 58 to 72 millimeter turbine stuff is I'm Garrett all the way.
Yeah.
Or you can buy a Borg Warner and it'll last until your grandkids get the car.
As long as it's a fucking Cadillac and you've got an engine bay big enough to put it in. Because we all know that's the one drawback to a Borg Warner is the fact that they're physically larger than anybody else's units and they're hard to package. As long as you got the physical room for them, they're, you know.
I crammed them into mine.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Me too.
You made room for them.
If I had to fit a Borg in my car, I'd have a hole in my hood and a hole in my headlight.
Well,
GTOs
fitting too.
GTOs to be a big car, they don't have a lot of engine bay room.
Yeah, everyone's like, "Where's all your room?" I was like, "Look inside," because my short 5'5" ass needs all of the
there
room
is
inside that car.
no room. Right?
It's fucking shocked. It's the strut towers in the car. The
well, I was gonna say you need to get with Stephen Eads and like have him design a damn tubular front end kit like they did the F bodies for everything.
Steven will do
you
that.
need to get.
In my case, it was keeping AC and all that. I was trying not to cut too much of the front of the car.
Right.
But the what is it? Not the current gen CTSV, but the previous LSA cars. Those are worse than the GTO under the hood.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had to change the plugs on one recently, and I was convinced I was doing something wrong, and I jumped on the forums real quick, and every other post was take it to the dealer. I'm like, no, this is dumb. I went back, and 2 hours later, I'm like, yeah, this normally would go to the dealer, but it's a car we were tuning, and the guy had
I gotta ask,
some crap plug gapped at 042.
Did you look like you got in a fight with Wolverine?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I still have. My mom came over today. It was the first time I've seen her in like months. And like I reach up to like scratch my head or something. She's like, "What happened to your arm?" I'm like, I don't even know. Like at this point.
The next time he needs to change plugs in it, he's gonna get like that one old boy that made that post that one time. He was a big old boy like me, and he got pissed off. I can't remember who it was. He had to change plugs on a 4th Gen F body. Got pissed and dropped the K member to change plugs on the 4th Gen F body.
No, we
I remember
saved his arms while doing that.
So
I remember that post on Facebook like it was yesterday because it was one of those viral posts that went like got shared like 300 times. But he straight drive the motor and trans to change the plugs.
If you got to do an intake or an oil pressure sensor on an F body, you might as well just kiss your arms goodbye. You might just go to the hospital afterwards. You're done.
Yeah. Hey, pro tip. You got to get some wire cutters, and what gets you is
cut all those little sharp points off.
Yep. Yeah, look, those little Christmas tree push plugs on the cowl. Cut all those off, and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually just have a pair of like really thin of the like Kevlar welding sleeves or whatever that I actually use on grid with me at FD. So when we do a 5-minute, I don't care about reaching up by the exhaust, and I start wearing those, and they're a pretty good protection for the most part.
If you take James, another pro tip with an F body, if you take the air filter assembly off the top of the core support, put a 4x4 on it and lay some plywood from the 4x4 to the intake manifold, you can just lay down on top of the motor and reach every.
Yeah.
Because, the front bumper is 27 feet away from the first cylinder.
Oh, yeah.
I would pay to see Purdue.
It's because they had to lean their way back for the catfish face on it.
Yeah. Me and you have been in person. You're a big dude. You're not as big as me. I would never even fucking attempt to change plugs on a 4th Gen F body. I'm just not that dumb.
Dude, I kid you not. When I bought my first F body,
plugs on 4th Gen.
I dropped it off with TJ at Trick Pro, where the class just was that TJ changed the plugs on this because I can't do it.
So I'm small.
I can do it in like super short
I can
time.
actually squeeze myself in the engine bay to be able to. It's the only way I can reach stuff is I'll actually take a step stool and get up in the engine bay and stand in the corner of the engine bay.
Now, once you take the AC and all the crap off, it's not bad.
Right. Evans, you're like the size of my 19-year-old daughter. You could like do some aerobatic shit and get to the bottom back to.
I'm wiry.
That doesn't. Yeah, wiry. Yeah, that's one way.
Yeah, so like we have a high school kid we just hired. that he's
I just lean over the engine. I just lay on the thing.
So I did that on my buddy's Cummins, the old 12 valve mechanical, and that had the big square intake manifold on them or whatever.
Yep.
And I had a square Cummins shaped bruise on my chest for about 2 weeks. Like at the time, it seemed like a good idea, and like later in the next day, because my buddy was over for a couple of days, it was we were doing a bunch of maintenance on his truck. I'm like, man, why does my chest hurt? And I have this square bruise, and I'm like lifting my shirt up to look, and my buddy starts laughing, and he's like, "What?" It was like, remember when you were laying on my truck? I was like, "Oh, god damn it!"
That's funny.
Like Cummins logo in the middle, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Dan Morin, he's a diesel guy before he went to DBR, and he's got the what they call truck creepers. So it's literally like a lay down platform that's elevated that you roll over the engine bay, and you can set it like right above the engine, then you can crawl up on it and lay down on top of it to work on top of the motors and stuff. It's like the greatest thing ever.
They've got one too that's lower that goes right over the door sill that I made like a little cheap version. So when I'm under a dash wiring, I can like lay on this bench upside down under a dash instead of being like crammed under the
that like
seat
slides in
like
between the seat and the dash. That's great.
Yeah. Until you work on a
And
car
Earl's
with a big seat and there's no room.
Earl's purple truck, 69 C10 engine bay's got so much room, and he's got a big block in it.
Earl's going
so much room in the engine bay. You could have like a for what? Everybody knows that truck.
Earl's, yeah. You just called fucking Earl's truck a Chevy. He is going to fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, big Ford. Sorry, his big Ford truck. Whatever. It don't matter. His big ass purple truck has so much room in the engine bay. You could have a square dance in there. You could literally have like a big square dance in there.
That's like Dad's K10. Dad's K10. I could crawl in the engine bay and sit on the inner fender well and do the spark plugs.
Yeah, it's gigantic in size. Some of those things. Old pickup trucks of every generation, every maker are all huge engine bays with like tiny little engines in them. You can, fit 12 people in there to work on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
they're hilarious. Call Earl's truck a C10. Oh boy,
it's the same shit.
So out of all the shit we've started on the show, that's going to be the one that gets us in trouble.
If you know Earl, you will understand.
Brian's a little too new to remember the other shit we started on this show.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you got sued for $14 billion, sir. Everybody's quiet.
No comment. I'm not even getting involved.
No comment, right?
No comment. I'm scared to comment.
Not it.
I told you, I'm beat down tired tonight.
I'm with you on that.
Like I'm going to bed early tonight.
Not much bullshit today, that's for sure.
I'm tolerant. My brain just ain't working.
If you knew Earl, you'd understand why it's funny because Earl's what, 60, early 60s now? Late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, he was born in 69.
Yeah, so he's late 50s now, early 60s. He's coon ass Cajun as they come. And I say that
old school.
I say that with the utmost love and respect for that man because
here comes the BLM. Thanks, fucker.
I love Earl Snexnader with every ounce of me more than about any guy on the face of this damn planet. Because that dude, he's one of the most solid dudes I know. He would rather aggravate somebody than eat. Swear to God.
Yep.
And if you give him ammunition, he will use it till it's just he will wear a hole in the rug walking on you with it. And it's just funny. It's just hilarious.
But he'll also pick you up and dust you off afterwards because he's that nice of a guy on top of it.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. And he'll be the first person. He could be the first person you call if you ever get in a jam, and he'll be the first person there to get you out of it. But he's just, if there's ever an epitome of, you aggravate the people you love the most, it's Earl. And it's so funny. You ever talk to him on the phone? get started, he get him excited, he starts talking quick, and you can't understand a damn word he says, and it's just the conversation.
Some people can't.
You might be able to, but sometimes he's gotten going so fast I couldn't even understand him. I had told him to slow his damn ass down. I had to tell him to slow. I mean, I can understand some hillbilly ass shit, but he can get going so fast I can't even understand him. And man,
it's funny when I take some of these New England guys out to events in the Midwest and South and stuff like that. I literally have to translate.
Yeah, it's funny.
I can imagine. That's got to be hilarious. Watch it. A really hard New England accent versus a hard Louisiana accent. It's got to be.
Yeah, like all my
that's got to be fun.
From Missouri, and some of them get pretty hillbilly, and then like I've got some friends that are like super like stereotypical Boston, like think you're like most cliche Mark Wahlberg Boston accent. Yeah, and that's usually if you just sit back and laugh, as long as they're not fighting each other, it's pretty hilarious. But
it's like you can't get any harder to understand than Irish Jewish.
Right. Oh, hell.
Apparently me and John are ugly. Everyone's calling me and John ugly on the chat right now.
They want you to get in a fight because it's very entertaining.
Well, I mean, I can't get mad at somebody for telling the truth about me. I mean, that's just the way the fucking shit is.
You want to see John get mad? Nitrous is better than Turbo.
Yeah, the only argument I'd have with that is that's why they put weight on the turbo cars.
And that's why we use nitrous sometimes to spool a turbo?
If nitrous is so much better, then why do they get to be running at pussy-ass weights in all the classes?
Why you gotta go there, man? Still faster. Just saying.
Yeah, why do you gotta have a 1,000-pound weight break for a nitrous car?
It's like,
you know what? It's literally like doing push-ups, only instead of doing them from your feet, you like get to do the girl push-ups with your knees.
Jesus. I'm sitting here keeping track of all the lawsuits and death threats we're gonna get so far. I got at least 3 different manufacturers are gonna come after my shit when you guys log out. We got Black Lives Matter because Bewley's over here talking about coon asses, and most people do not know what that term meant.
Listen. I want to know what Black Lives Matter is going to come after us for talking about Cajuns for. That don't even make any fucking sense. What the fuck?
Right.
I mean, there's not a Cajun alive that's going to be offended by calling somebody a coon ass.
Oh no, certainly Louisiana. Not. That's a totally normal term down there, but
you ain't got nothing to fucking worry about. Then shut up.
I'm surprised about how many liberal
people you were talking
I got nothing to worry about there. Maybe
my neighbor would get offended for those people.
Jack Lane,
that's where I was coming from.
Me and Jack Lane are gonna fight.
Well, tell your neighbor to put on their mask and go back inside.
That's not a fight.
What are you talking about? They don't leave their house without a mask around here.
You and Jack Lane, that's not even a fight. That's you smacking around a midget.
Hey, John, what kind of, I believe he means RPM. What kind of RPM do you like to see in your Turbo Stage 3 cam? I kept moving up my shift point so it wouldn't drop below 6,500. Ended up shifting at 7,800 and it dropped mile an hour over 7,600. 480E with 373s, sir.
Then you move it back to 7,600 if that's where it made the best mile an hour. 7,600 for the Stage 3 is about where it's at. It's usually a mid 7,000 RPM cam.
What intake manifold? That'll also play.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got a Pro Flow on it. If it's a Stage 3 and a Pro Flow, 74 to 7,600 is about where that should play out.
Yeah, he kind of answered his own question on that. It dropped a mile an hour. When it starts dropping mile an hour, you've gone too high.
Yeah, you've gone past the point where you need to go to. Just take the shift point back, and then you found the sweet spot. You have successfully executed a shift loop test. So
yep, and it's not about where it makes. It's not about how far the power carries out because the power can carry really far. But if your converter drops 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 RPM because of the nature of the converter, where it drops to makes a big difference. It's average power over from where your converter drops to where you shift at that makes the difference. Don't care if it makes another 300 horsepower for another 4,000 RPM if the drop is so far that it slows you down.
Yeah,
And
worrying
if
about
it's-
the RPM where it falls back to is more important than how much the RPM is on the drop. Because 9 times out of 10, you can manipulate how far the RPM is on the drop by where you're shifting it at, and it'll end up dropping back to the exact same RPM every time. And
Scott McDonald is the smartest guy. The most important sensor in every single race car, he's even highlighting out, is a G meter. The G meter will answer your question every single time.
Yeah, that it does. I was going to say, if
That's
the
all-
RPM is
that's
dropping
the
too much, just turn the boost up. It'll drop
Yep.
less on the next time.
That's the reason why I like hyper control boost controllers. If anybody's ever played with one, you can actually do boost control by acceleration G.
Yep.
Which is fucking cool.
They are cool. Joe's box.
Yeah. I need to send my box to him and let him update the software.
I have that ability on the M-Tron just because I can make any table use any axes value, any function, any sensor.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. His box is acceleration G in mile an hour.
Can someone
I like that.
Haltech too, it takes a little bit more work on the setup side.
Yeah, it probably takes a whole lot more work to set a table up to make that right. Once you got it right, it's pretty freaking sweet.
Yeah, there's a lot of math on the back end that you probably want to do to make it right.
Yeah, I'm not played with one, but I've done setups on half a dozen cars that use that boost controller, and the guys are advanced enough that they don't need my input to make their car go down the track. And, they've shared with me what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I've seen the control strategies and the softwares and stuff. And, they don't need my input, but I've got to see what they're doing. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty cool.
Blaine, just pull timing. If RPM starts dropping down into where you're seeing your biggest VE numbers, pull some timing out of those numbers to save the stock rods. I get what you're saying now. You're trying to push RPM up to keep it above rod breaking territory. And if it keeps dropping down there and you can't get it, just pull some timing numbers out of that area. It'll still drive through it, I promise.
Then the converter's too tight. If the converter's tight enough that it's pulling it back into someplace you don't want to be on the fallback, then the converter's too tight and you need a different stator in the converter. Like if it's pulling you down to 5,800 RPM on the fallback or 6,000 and you want the fallback RPM to be higher, you need to put a different stator in the converter. That's what the stator manipulates.
The answer is always plus sign on the boost controller.
Absolutely.
It's always.
Yeah, I was gonna say usually I pull the quick change gears out and tell the driver to keep his foot in it more.
More nitrous, more boost. One of the two. Pick one.
A similar response can be said on the launch too. I had a guy I was talking to online earlier that was talking about his launch was pulling the RPM down on his launch, and he was, you could hear it dragging the car down, and he was only launching at like 3,800, 4,000 RPM. I told him, turn up the launch RPM, turn up the boost. The two of them combined might get you what you need. Otherwise, it's time to send in the converter and get something different if it doesn't do what you need it to do.
Drive through the converter on the leave. Power through that bitch.
Yep.
Tyler, you need one input per axis you want to monitor. He's asking about utilizing a G meter on a Terminator X. You just need one input per axis you want to monitor.
If that's the way he wants to do it, if he's doing an analog. Are there any CAN-based G meter stuff or dash-based G meter stuff for Holly yet?
I don't think there's any of that yet for the Holly. I think it's all still analog inputs.
Okay. Yeah. Then Tyler, you just need analog input for each channel.
Yeah. And you can buy the little Holly 2-axis G meter. It'll do just fine. You don't have to have 3 axes. You really only truly need the forwards and backwards axes for this function.
Yeah, that's one axis. Yep.
That's one.
Blaine, if you got a 4L80 and you've got any other converter in it besides either a non-lock 9.5 from PTC or a 252 millimeter from Circle D, it's never going to flash high enough to do what you're wanting to do with it. It's never going to act loose enough to do what you're wanting to do because the converter is just physically too large in diameter and the pump and the turbine have entirely too much area. If you're going to try and keep it, you've got to get into a 252 from Circle D or one of the non-lockup 9.5s from PTC. Those are the only two options you've got to be able to do what you're talking about wanting to do. I don't even know. I didn't even read what converter you've got in it with that thing. So
Drink.
Time for a drink.
I don't have any tonight.
The G meter for the parachute. Lyle Barnett uses the G meter for the parachute, which is cool.
I see that. So yes, I've seen guys that when I forget what the side-to-side axis is, gets out of control, it'll auto dump the chute.
Oh, nah, that shit. I don't do that at all. Never.
No, you got to be on your
I've learned from that mistake. Honestly, I'm just going to be honest. That sounds like someone who thinks it sounds like a cool idea and hasn't found out how that can fuck your shit up yet.
Well, let's say you let go of the starting line like Lembo's asking. So let's say you're like Charles Johnson, your buddy Charles' truck.
Yeah.
You let go of the button, the truck jumps sideways right off the line. You could have easily pedaled and made a pass, but it dumped the chute on you.
Now, there's worse situations. Didn't that Devin guy tell everybody to do that and then went to make a left turn at the end of this and dumped all of his chutes out or something hilarious like that?
I could see a lot of places where that would not be the. I'm all for when the car's out.
I know guys that were trying to use I know guys that were trying to use their ECU to decide whether or not to launch their fire suppression systems. Let me tell you how bad of a mistake that is, because for every one time that may work right, you'll have at least 30 times where it'll not work right.
That's bad
testing. Yeah. Bad ideas. Anything that can upset. Don't shut the car off for the driver. Here's the best safety. This is years and years of experience on drag cars in Bonneville speaking, because I was always the technical nerd. Hey, guy, make the computer do this. I probably was like the Barnhill of the drag racing groups that I hung out with. And they were, can you do this creative stuff and that creative stuff? And then generally always regretted it, because you never want to just turn the car off, for example, for oil pressure, air fuel safeties, whatever. Hell, I don't even like boost safeties. What I do for my boost safety is I just kill all the timing at high boost, and then the motor will come back to the target boost or the top where we want it to run. Because if you just shut the car off, dude, I know I didn't do it. I know guys that have shut the car off when the car was a little bit sideways because it blew the tires off a drag car and ended up flipping the car over because the power dumped out of it. Right? I know a guy that crashed hard at Bonneville because he had something. I know another guy that destroyed an engine at Bonneville because his dipshit tuner, this is one of the guys that was like, you don't want Scott Clark tuning your car, I'll do it better. And went out and destroyed engine after engine for this guy with his dumbass safety ideas. Just what you do is you set up a warning for the driver. I'll usually do a yellow light and a red light. Caution means something is approaching a limit you didn't like. Red means, hey man, we all agreed as a group to shut the motor down. It doesn't matter where it is, but as soon as you can get out of it and get things stabilized, get out of it. But if you lost oil pressure, you may need 1 or 2 seconds to get the chassis sorted out. Because think about it, a high-powered drag car, they're set up, they're not built to be able to just chop the power at any chassis.
You're driving the car with throttle.
Yes. Yeah.
And depending on what reason that sensor died, maybe it was a vibration death and it's not actually loss of pressure. And you can tell by the sound of it that it didn't lose pressure, so you can keep going. So sometimes the human intuition is the difference between $10,000 and aborting a run.
And that's what Ruben's saying right now. At the end of the day, your best basis is still the driver in the car.
And red light, shut down as soon as you can, buddy.
Yeah. Well, it might also be that $10,000 race that's like, I could give a fuck less if the motor scatters or not. We're going to the end.
Yeah. Leave it up to the driver.
I do a lot of safeties in the ECUs, but there's always a limit. I've never, ever completely, I know some guys that have said, oil pressure's low, shut the engine down. I'll set a boost limit. I'll lower the rev limit. I'll do some stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we have a tune that goes in that shuts every single safety off.
Yeah, alert the driver to a problem and then let him decide when it's time.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, especially...
We'll do what's within range to keep it as safe as possible and give him enough time to get off of it. But I've never completely shut anything down.
Yeah, and at high power, it's often better to feather it to slow down than it is just to let off.
I knew a pro stock car guy that had a safety to shut things down with fuel pressure loss, and it looked like what happened was, and I'll be careful because people saw this on national TV, but there was a car that went into the wall because it did an abrupt shutdown, and driver was first early in the season, new with EFI, so give him that, but Driver wasn't sure what was going on. Car shuts down kind of towards the end of the run. Then gets out of shape, makes a hard turn, bumps into the wall. But because he didn't have his fuel pump controlled by the ECU, car burnt to the ground because as it hit the wall, it busted a fuel line. And the remaining 2 gallons of fuel in the car sprayed all over the place. You talk about a wrong setup.
I will say that on road race and drift stuff, and there's always a limit, and we always set, I'll always test in every single car what our average G limit is and set the emergency way over that. But I have had some of the PDMs set to at least shut down the fuel pump X number of seconds after a massive impact.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
But I do give it a delay. That way, if, it was something weird, the driver has a chance to get the car under control. And you can set some limits on that, hey, if it sees this big spike, but then these other criteria meet, like the car is still moving at this certain speed with a fairly consistent, give it some time. But yeah.
So, something else to say about the whole thing is, while we try to do our best to make every intention of doing 100% the best possible way to make it as safe as possible, we understand that not every system and not everything is able to do it the same way, and you have to make your own decisions as to what the safe way of getting those things shut down is. Some systems don't allow you to do it the way that we like to do it. Some systems do. So obviously you have to come up with the method that makes the most sense to be as safe as possible with the system you are using.
And that's straight up, forget that. That is tuning in a nutshell. Everything about tuning is using your best knowledge and critical thinking to figure out what the best way to
common
proceed
sense
is.
And it always boils down to simple approach, common sense. I see these guys trying to overcomplicate things, and then the same guys whose customers are blowing shitloads of money and they're not winning any races. They're not winning anything other than roll races.
As I always tell people, the hardest part of tuning is what you do when the numbers don't make sense.
Yeah.
Pushing the button till your 2 magic numbers match, that's freaking easy. It's how to make that happen when, or you're like, I'm 20% lean. I added 20% fuel and now I'm 18% lean. Okay, what's going on here? Clearly something else is wrong. And that's when you wind up seeing a map with 300% VE or whatever in it.
But is the math right?
Clearly not.
Ruben, you just said exactly
nailed it. I just saw that. Yes.
You want to teach a tuner and a driver, give them a carbureted car with a power grid, a nitrous kit, and tell them to go out there and do it. No other data, no other nothing.
Dude, Ruben was at our class 2 weeks ago. I just got to meet him for the first time. Dude, I like you, Ruben. Just going to throw it out there, man. You are no bullshit. We had a good time. Dude had a lot of good stuff to share. I thought it was really cool. I actually turned some of the nitrous tuning over to him.
He reads spark plugs, Scott.
No, I'm cool with whatever he wants to do, man. I'm cool. But just, he can read spark. I don't care if he reads poodles' buttholes. You know what I mean? I don't care about that at all. If the cars move, I'm cool with it. That's all I care about. This poodle ate corn for lunch. Sorry.
Ethanol.
Sorry,
E85 poodle.
Right. Didn't quite
There's
complete the conversion.
There's a great question on Facebook that we will all answer basically the same way. We are slowly transitioning into the turbo game at the shop. With that being said, what is your favorite engine management system and why? The short answer is find out what people in your area like to use that you can get support for. We don't care what it is if it works. As long as you have support for it and somebody can help you when you have questions, it's the right system.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I will say that means actual support, not, hey, this is what all the guys online said they can do.
No. So be careful. A YouTube guy is not support. A YouTube guy who's reading you the manual and more worried about his tattoos.
We want you to go to the track.
Yeah.
We want you to go to the track, talk to all your other buddies there, talk to their friends, their enemies, and everybody,
or guys
and
who are
see
running a
what
combo
they're
that's doing
using.
What you want. If 70% of the people at the track are running a Holley EFI, then by all means, that's probably a smart purchase for you because you're going to have a lot of people who can help you if you need it. If everybody there is running old school big stuff, then, well, maybe you should look into it. It's a little outdated. We're not, we like to go newer and better, but it still works. Still plenty of them out there. I mean, Scott McDonald.
Maybe it's the thing for your area.
Scotty McDonald said, hey, Holley or Fuel Tech. And he's got a point because it seems to be,
those two. Yes, that's the
top two. That's
pretty
the
much
top
it.
two that's the top two in it right now.
If you're a little more experimental, I'd be a Max ECU or M-Tron guy. I've seen those both do good things.
But you have to have a really good.
You got to know a lot more.
Understanding of EFI.
Yeah, true. You need to have a little more
how the
experience
stuff
to branch
works.
out on some of those, right? A little more experience.
But the
if you've been in it for a while.
I'm somebody who is EFI dumb. Like when it comes to operating the system, I'm not tuning dumb. I'm system operations dumb. And I will tell you that I can sit down and I can operate a Holly before I can operate any other system that's out there on the market today.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think that brings up a
Not in
good
a
point.
way that makes sense to more people.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of experiment.
But
Go ahead.
let me ask you this, guys. Hold on.
Never sat down with a fuel tech.
Well, fuel tech's pretty simple, I would argue.
Yeah.
I mean,
they are.
I'm giving that caveat.
They're
I don't
both straightforward.
have any experience with the fuel tech.
Yeah.
I've sat down with a Hall Tech.
But John can look at a Holly data log and go and get some info that's useful.
I can sit down with a Holly data log.
But let me ask you this:
figure out what I need to know off of a Holly data log.
What do you
I can
recommend?
Go into the tables on a Holly and change it.
Those of you, and here we go with letters from Holly again. But would those of you that have tuned on this stuff a while, and Beely included, what would you recommend to a guy who was isolated, say he's out in the Pacific Northwest, doesn't have a bunch of people around him, not a lot of drag racers, wants to build a drag car, wants to pick an ECU, and it was based, and he had no local support or local dyno shops? Would Holly be the one you recommend? I mean, honestly, if you had to...
Holly, because you find a lot more
100%.
tuners.
Yes.
I would recommend the Holly because the support online is huge, and you have a lot more people right now doing remote tuning for the Holly. Like, there's not that everybody is great at it, but there are a ton of people who can help you from a distance.
Yes.
This is where I get to say call BLP.
Yeah, so like one thing I always said, and
I'm with
Beely
Mark.
mentioned sitting down with the software, but
I'm with Mark on this one, man, because again, I saw that BLP carburetor go on a motor in 10 minutes, and other than Mark forgot how to start a carbureted motor, everything went smooth.
Thought that was funny.
Dude, you gotta pump it, dipshit.
In my opinion, from a
hang on, go ahead, James.
From a core standard, place, I don't think any of them are any different than one another. I think
not.
Any of them you have to go in and
not.
set up fuel injector. Any of them you have to go in and set up engine size. Any of them you
gotta
have to
set
go
up
in
the
and set up your
ignition.
inputs and outputs.
And dare I say, starting from scratch, I can go through a fuel tech now faster than I can go through a Holly.
Yeah,
And-
almost same here. It depends what you're doing.
But in a way, you can't really use your personal experience for it because we do this stuff every day. If you
Except
just
for
open
me.
up, well, yeah, that's
So-
true. But
So the majority of people I know that just buy it and try it on their own, because I have a lot of friends who don't know anything, but they want to learn and they want to do stuff. The majority of them, and I've had friends who have bought both Fuel Tech and Holly. The ones that have bought the Holly have seemed to found it the most intuitive to them. Not necessarily to everybody, but to them it was the most intuitive. The guys with the Fuel Tech looked at both. Still found, some of them found the Fuel Tech more intuitive to them. Some of them felt like they were they looked at the Holly and felt it was easier for them to understand.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was
I can get that
was
because there's some
my
stuff in Fuel Tech that's in Portuguese too. Still, I can get that.
See, that was my impression of it. Like my impression, when I sit down with the software, I downloaded the Holly and the Hall Tech software, and I piddled around with both of those. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to see what it was like with no research, no guidance from James. I mean, James is 45 minutes down the road from me. If I need Hall Tech help, I have Hall Tech help, just to drive.
From one of the best, yes.
Yeah, from the best Hall Tech person, in my opinion. And if he doesn't know the answer, Eric Gash and the whole freaking Hall Tech USA crew is another 30 minutes up the road in Lexington. And we, if he doesn't have the answer, we've got the person that has the answer, that's a phone call away. I wanted to try it with no guidance, no research, just cold turkey. And I found that I can navigate the Holly. And after sitting through Scott's class the first time and just like following his guide to set something up, to start something from scratch. I sat down and I did it myself, tried to do it myself. And me personally, it was easier to follow what he was doing and go through and do that in the Holly than it was a Haltech.
Interesting, because you've been to both classes. I've not been trained on Haltech, so I stay neutral.
Well,
on that.
Yeah,
you know, and
I
I
will
wasn't either. But trying to find the tables to put the information in that you say to use, getting to VE tables, getting to this table, getting to that table, going and finding this, going and finding that, going to the data logger screens and selecting the parameters that I want to show up on the data logger, setting panels up on the data logger to show what I wanted to show with
Oh,
what.
yeah. You are getting
Doing
good at that
things-
shit too, man. Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
going through
I think
and finding all of that stuff and setting a Holly user interface up the way I wanted it to be. I did this over about a 3-day time period. And to me personally, I found the Holly easier for me to do that in.
I want to add one other thing though. Was this before or after the class? Because in a way, you're already biased to a Holly because you got taught it.
Well, it was after
See
the
what I'm
class.
saying?
Tough
It was
call.
after
No,
the
James
class.
is right. I mean,
Some of that
because
was. I mean,
what
I knew what
I've-
some of the.
because what
I knew
I've,
what some of the icons were.
Yeah, because
I mean,
see, what
obviously,
I've-
some of the icons were from class on them
what
and
I
showing
have
them and
seen
stuff. But
is that whatever software that you start off with is what you're going to naturally
so
compare everything to.
But
I
you
was
got
a
to realize
Megasport guy.
I didn't. But you got to realize I didn't participate in the class 100%. I just sat around twiddling my thumbs and was just watching and observing. I didn't have my laptop out doing it as the class did it. I was
Did you
just
go
watching
for lunch and then leave like I did?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'll say
you
it
know,
with-
and then waited.
I'll say it without a doubt, and this is
started tuning.
sorry.
this is not knocking a Haltech. Haltech's a great ECU, okay? But from a get-go, from a bare nothing, the majority of people have a much easier time with the Holly than they would with a Haltech.
On specific
It's just the
applications
nature of
like
how
an
it's laid
LS.
out.
Yeah.
On an LS.
I think there's
on basic stuff. On
Yes,
basic
on an
stuff
LS.
where
On
you
an
don't have to
LS.
do a bunch of custom setup, we'll say.
Yep.
Haltech is like
that's exactly what
Megasport,
it
though.
is.
They built it to try and work on more systems, so you end up with more things, more noise management parameters, and more software options to help you get a certain weird crank trigger working.
Speaking
that's-
of while we're on
that's
that,
it.
has anyone played
They-
with the Nexus yet and seen how noise is with the PDM built in?
I haven't yet, but I want to. The Bewley said one thing he kept saying is he downloaded the software and played with it. That is the very first thing I tell anybody that asks an ECU question. That is the first thing you do. And, you know, I am a big Haltech fan. I've never been shy about that. I will say, I think Holly, for someone that has zero or very little tuning experience, or has come from, you know, a more simple drag race carburetor to EF to really basic EFI to EFI, Holly has done a very good job of, I don't care if you've never seen a computer before, we can give you this and you can figure out how to get it set up.
It's dumbed down.
They dumbed it down
a
enough to
lot.
make it.
Right. And
They dumb it down to make it easier.
For
if you've
LS
got a little bit of
guys.
tuning experience and you basically can understand a little bit and you're used to it now, given I learned on
504
Motec
guys with a TFI. It works. It's super simple.
No,
Yeah.
man, it's
I-
not always that easy. But I mean, usually it's because TFIs are dying.
and especially if you're on an LS or something that Holly's so well supported on. But yeah, like once you start getting to some crank triggers, and that's the problem is once you start doing some stuff like that and you're doing a bunch of stuff, you need a little bit more in your ECU. And I will say once you get into something, you need the advanced stuff. I think the Haltech's very easy to set up, but it doesn't.
I'll
limit
agree with
you
that.
there. So you can go a lot further with it. There's still a limit.
Well,
and I remember I was doing something today and I got mad because, I wanted an Axis to be a custom math channel. I almost picked up the phone and yelled at Haltech because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I wanted writing using an output and making it a duty cycle output to be 0 to 100 that then built a table and used that as the axis instead. And it was for something dumb, like just something I wanted on a gauge or something like that too.
I mean,
Yeah,
once you
the thing.
once you get a little one thing about the Haltech software is once you get familiar with it, it becomes more intuitive, but the layout on it seems a lot more complicated when you dive into it cold turkey with the way they set the panels up. Because there's 5 panels that they put on the main interface. It seems a little cluttered.
Yeah, the thing that's different about them is the actual main display is all configurable, meaning that it's mixed with gauges and tables. So you can clear the thing out and just have the raw table, a 2-dimensional and a 3-dimensional, and just view the tables on the left pane.
Multiple pages, like the diagnostics page, and all of that's configurable. Right. Someone that's probably never seen
the difference there. The difference there is what you just said, configurable. New people don't need configurable. When you're new, you need this is how it is, period. And that's where the Holly being simplified down and making it, here is our layout, period. You don't get to change a lot. You can change the numbers on the axes. You can change the values that you're reading on the gauges on the live dash and the software, and that's it. You're stuck to exactly what they give you because they don't want you to have to go through all the extra stuff to configure to make it look like something that you need, that you want to use. The Haltech gives you that flexibility to do that because they're expecting you to have a little help or be a little more advanced when you get into it. It's a more advanced ECU, in my opinion.
Well, I disagree because they come with a default layout that has all that shit on it already.
I think the problem is
but it's so much stuff that new people, it's too much, and that's the big problem. It's too much for somebody who's brand new in it.
And they don't know to change what base map it all depends on what base map you load too. You could load one that's got all the shit on it, but you can dumb a Haltech down just as much as you can a Holly. Here's
the phrase you just said. You can dumb it down. Holly is already dumbed down. There's no dumbing down. It's already simplified. And that's where the difference comes into ease of use. You don't have to because it's already there. Now, you can't do a whole lot to up the Holly into looking the way you want. There's nothing to it.
Drive-by cable LS configuration, and it's going to be dumbed down just like a Holly. It doesn't have all that advanced shit enabled on a base map.
I'm not talking about the features of it. I'm talking about the layout of the screens when you look at them, right? You're talking about user configurable screens.
I think the takeaway here is AEM does it, but it works like crap. If we had a importable, like how HP Tuners does it, you can import layouts. If you could say, hey, this is our basic dumbed down, this is how you tune a drive-by cable LS car. Show all this stuff.
Seen some Haltech cars run good.
Starting out, it's a function of not knowing where to start. If you had just a little bit of knowledge, it probably wouldn't have seemed as daunting of a task or as daunting of a situation as what it was. But when you just go to Haltech's website and you download it, and there's the 4 panels, and you're looking and trying to find stuff. The default layout that gets you, seemed like it was more complicated, and not having the knowledge, just being ignorant of the fact that you can configure it. It just the starting point.
A brand new person, the starting bubble is I don't do anything.
Well, the other thing you have to look at too is the ECU support. You're not going to put a Holly on a 2JZ. You're not going to put a Holly on a RB28 or whatever.
I want to clear up something for Clark there because he just put in YouTube chat. I like my Entron and I hate the Haltech, but I don't hate the Haltech. Hang on. I like the Haltech. There are things I don't like about it, and it's why I chose an Entron.
Sure.
That's the difference. I do like the Haltech. I would have probably bought a Haltech because certain things were different for me.
You chose Entron also because you're advanced level and it had some interesting shit.
What's the comment?
It had things I was looking for.
Stuff, though. I put a Holly HP on a Ford Flathead. You could put a Holly on a 2JZ. What difference does that make?
I've done a Holly on a 2JZ.
I wouldn't.
Some people complain about the crank trigger with the 2JZ, and there are fixes for it, and it works. And you just have to do a little more research. And I don't know what the exact problem is that people are having. It's something with the cranking RPM.
No.
As far as I can tell, something with
VVTI. You got to understand which sensor to use. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, do you grab the Cornwell, the Snap-on, or the Macro ratchet?
And the icon from Harbor Freight, motherfucker.
Whichever
Well, the
one is
answer- the
closest to
answer-
me.
The answer to that one is the Snap-on.
But
So
is
the guy
anyone
who's
else
put at least
tighten
3
the bolt
Snap-on
better than the last
dependents
one?
through college.
Is any one of them going to tighten the bolt tighter than the next one?
Actually, yeah.
Yes, in some cases.
Yeah, in some
is the
cases, yes,
icon-
unfortunately.
Hey,
Is the
Sorry.
icon ratchet going to be recalled, and then the replacement then recalled again
Oh
as well?
man, yeah, I just saw that email today.
This is why I didn't bring the icon into the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, all I can say is the cheapy Harbor Freight Thunderous, whatever they call it, the big impact is a copy of an Ingersoll, and they're both awesome. They're so cheap versus expensive. If it's copied correctly, it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, most copies suck.
I'll still buy an Ingersoll.
You can keep that HP tuner stuff, I just send that to James Short. It's way easier.
hey, people are telling me I need to plug the class, but talk for about a minute. Let me pick some pictures, but let me get my. I'm gonna
I
get
did the
ready to
same
plug the
thing with
class.
HP tuners you did, Perduto. I wouldn't even open the motherfucker. I
It's
opened
crazy.
the damn thing up. And
Dude, I tell people, I plugged it into my truck. I read out my truck. I looked at those tables. I literally did like the straight up like Homer Simpson. Like I grabbed the top of the laptop and slowly shut it and went, that's enough of that. Like
For
Like, I was
anybody who
lucky
wants
that
some
I was-
back
I was
For everybody
watching
with back
stuff-
history,
able to fucking read it and load it.
I started with LS1 Edit, and I was so pissed off at the lack of the functionality that I needed that I helped HP tuners with development and made functions happen like the histograms and a lot of the scanner things that we worked on in the very, very beginning in beta.
hang on. You mean
That's some
LS1
back
edit,
history.
LS1 edit and auto tap because you had to have auto tap to read some of the things.
Yes,
LS1
you had to have
edit would read
both.
it. And then
And
you had a
there was
7-minute
the-
flash. Heaven forbid you did something wrong because it was 7 minutes to flash it again.
Seven
Well,
minutes, and if you
50-50
open
chance
the
you're
door
gonna
of the
break it.
car during the time, if you open the car door or a dome light turned on while you were writing, you brick the ECU.
I
Well,
have
no,
tuner
time.
cats
you
here.
looked at the
Put it on the
ECU
charger,
wrong, it
don't
broke the
touch a thing.
ECU.
Evans, if you want to get old, I have tuner cats here, bro. If you want to get old, okay?
Oh God.
I was doing tuner catch, yeah. And let's not forget about the quarter horse.
I
I
put that
when
stuff in the
Audi-
drawer where it belongs.
Here's
When
the
Audi
32 right
first
here.
went to when Audi first went to internet-based programming, they to change out a dash module, you had to plug the car into the internet and download everything from Audi.
Oh my God.
And one of the guys in our shop was unfortunately the first person to have to do that, and he bricked 6 dashes
Oh,
at like $1,200 a piece.
oh,
And
Wow.
and they had Audi tech support and this and that, and they're like, and here's the best part about the Audi Dash is once it's bricked, it's done. That's it. You need another one. So it was
Wow.
the takeaway from that is when they make it so complex and so secure where if one little hiccup goes wrong and the whole thing is shit, that to me is too far because you need to be able to service it.
Yeah. I will tell you, speaking of HP tuners, and I'm sure it exists out there and I'm just dumb to it, but there was a heck of a market if someone could figure out a way of, oh, you're going to work on a 2002 Camaro today. These are the only tables you need. If you plug this in on top of your HP tuners, it only lets you use the tables you need to modify.
Yeah, go
basically
to
like
go
a-
to the view and go to basic instead of advanced, and it hides
Yeah, I was
all
gonna
that.
say,
Yep.
or have a basic plus where some guy has decided that this is all you need. Where I forget what it. I haven't looked at the basic mode in so long. What does
I
it
haven't
even look
either. I haven't
Usually
either.
I open it, I'm
A
like,
lot-
where are all my tables? Oh crap! I'm in basic mode. This fit sucks.
watching James teach that class just
You
made
know-
me think this is where I'm gonna hire James. That's too. It's good
I
stuff.
When he
I
taught
know
the
the,
class down here, I sat in the back with you, Scott, and I think I was glassy-eyed for about 7.5 hours. Just like,
Yeah, but it was cool watching the car run perfect right up the first time he started it up. There's
It
really
was.
no tweaks to make. But
Yeah, the most of the tuning's in the setup. That's crazy.
yeah, no, it's cool. Hey, while we're here and we're changing subjects a little bit, we have a class coming up in Texas weekend after next, July 18th and 19th. It's at Pro Tree Automotive, Pro Tree Racing, which is Daniel Raff's shop. He's a BMF on radials, man. He's fast. This is a guy that runs with Derek Kelly and those guys. He's fast. But anyway, it's at his shop, and I just got a call today. One of my buddies at Dallas Performance, they're building a land speed car that's going for Texas Mile, and it's capable of 3,000 horsepower, and they want us to tune it at that class. It's a C6 Corvette, or 7, I forget which, something pretty modern vet. But anyway, we're going to be tuning that at the class, so it's $550 if you sign up before the day of the show. But again, that's the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and there are literally, there's like 8 or 9 seats still left open. I have plenty of seats left open for that. However, people have been bugging us for a long time, and we tried to get this done back at the end of May, but 2 of the target shops that we tried to do this at had problems.
Closed.
That is an online class or a live stream class, which let me tell you is really hard to do. I've live streamed some of our classes already that were the Mopar tuning classes because it was hard to get people to sign up for those because there's not a lot of Mopar tuners yet. So we did live streams for those, and it's challenging to keep that entertaining and keep people awake or whatever, but we think we've figured it out. So we are having a live streamed version of this tuning clinic that we're doing it in Royce City in 2 weekends. So again, that's $299. If you go to RealTuners.com, you can look up live classes and you can see live tuning class schedule and you can see these classes. But the actual URL is RealTuners.com/product/DFW for the class that's in person, and RealTuners.com/product/DFW stream for the class that's live stream. And how that's going to work, just so people know, the live stream class, we're actually going to do this one through a private Facebook group. We've tested this out. It seems to work pretty good. Basically, you're going to get access to this private Facebook group, and we're going to put every segment we do, which is probably 3 to 4 videos per day. We'll break them up. Try to break them up by topic, and we will have those videos live streamed in there where you can ask questions and interact with us just like you're doing here. We'll have a couple of moderators helping us out throughout the day to kind of gather questions up and for the instructor. But worth checking out because that one is going to have the videos recorded and still online after the class. So we may do some editing to clean them up and make them a little better presentation when it's done, but we'll leave the videos in there so people can buy into that one later on after the fact if they want to. Basically, you order the product online, we contact you with the Facebook information to add you to the group, and then we go from there. So I highly recommend, listen, we did everything we could to make the live stream version as cheap as we possibly could. And so, I mean, there's a pretty significant cost with bringing in a guy to do the video and audio production stuff, which we've got a guy, he's coming with me. But worth checking out in person if you can come down to Daniel's class, honestly. Whatever works. But anyway, there's the pitch for the classes. If you guys want to come, cool. If not, if you can sign up for the live stream, cool. Do it. People are already starting to sign up for it, so it's a go. It's going to happen. But if you have any questions, ask them here before we wrap it up tonight. We got 20 more minutes. Anybody?
Scott, are you ever going to do a class in Florida in summer again?
So they wanted $2,500 to bring in an air conditioner that would have cooled that place, but and I would have paid that. But he needed a 480 drop. He needed a 3-phase 480 drop at like 60 amps to be able to cool that place off. So, but honestly, it wasn't that bad with the. I mean, Perduto, you were the one that said, "Dude, get a lot of fans," and we rented a shit ton of fans.
Move air. Just keep air moving.
And we did, and
Dude,
it wasn't
we just
that
had
bad.
4
And
fans
we made
dropped
sure
off
that
the shop
every seat.
today.
This is my instruction to the guys setting up. I want you to sit in every seat in the room. We had a full class. There was like 22 people sitting there. Every seat, I want to have air blowing over it. Right? And then we had to mess around with a PA system so people could hear me. We got that going. It was okay. It worked good. I enjoyed the class. We had fun. We made some big power. We had 15 and 1600 horsepower, wheel horsepower cars on his Superflow chassis dyno, which is not the most friendly dynos. It's not the Bob Marley dynos that Bewley loves to make fun of. That's for sure. Summer Florida class. Yeah. But thumbs up to the guys that did that showed up at that class. We appreciate it. And brought cars.
One of the big names in diesel tuning, Firepunk, Lynn Miller, is sitting here watching. I'm wondering if he's thinking about venturing over here into something with spark plugs. He's been listening for a while.
Ooh.
And I wonder if he's thinking about making a jump over to Sparkplug World, Mr. Lynn. What are you doing over here?
You should do it.
He should come over here. Let me tell you something. You have never met a crew of guys, for those guys that don't know who Fire Punk Diesel is, that work harder and quieter. They sit real quiet. They work on their stuff in the background, and when they come out fast.
Speak softly, carry a huge stick.
They live that life, boy.
Yep.
Just tell them the spark plugs make the cool blue blinky blinky.
Jake Hildebrand over here giving you guys a hard time.
Knockoff tools.
Yeah, talking about ripping on knockoff car parts, then buying knockoff tools. Yeah, but I expect my knockoff tools to be one-time use and go in the trash. I'm just saying that's what I expect from them.
When I know I'm going to do something that's break a tool, I go to the other tech in the shop's drawer and borrow a Snap-on.
I don't own any COVID tools, Jake.
In my defense, I'm only supposed to do wiring and tuning. So if I'm going in the box, which happens every day, I'm doing something that I originally wasn't supposed to be working on, but wound up having to help out on. So
I have
James
Snap-on. There's Snap-on Matco in my personal box. For the track, I keep the Pittsburgh stuff because it tends to not be there when you come back from a pass.
James, what are you showing us there?
Sense.
I don't have my $300
ready to show us his
in
toolbox.
my track box.
Let James give us a show and tell here.
Everything Snap-on. There's a bunch.
For a reason,
Yeah,
right?
it's stupid.
Attaboy.
I mean,
I have a full mix of Snap-on, Lowe's, Home Depot, Harbor Freight, and to be honest, my Home Depot Husky brand ratchets are my favorite of all things. I love them.
Bro, I have a ratchet. It's an old school Am-Pro. I believe they used to sell it at Advanced Auto Parts, and that is my go-to ratchet. If it ever breaks, I'm going to be heartbroken. I don't know if I could ever replace it, but
I will say that a lot of some of this new Snap-on stuff is straight off the China boat, I think, because as of recently, I swear I've broken a shit ton more Snap-on sockets than I care to admit. But the Snap-on guy keeps coming and replacing them, so it's all I can ask for. And luckily, I've got about 4 different sockets of every size. So,
But how many 10 millimeter?
a bunch.
That's hilarious. I'll just say
speaking
this,
of
though.
10 millimeter, they sell a 10 millimeter package at Walmart.
Yes.
It's literally got a
Like
quarter
5
inch drive.
It's like a dozen 10 milli. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
It's the greatest thing ever. Where'd everybody go?
I don't know.
I don't know. It got real quiet all of a sudden.
I had to mute myself. I got the dog all wound up.
Perduto left. He just disappeared.
No, I'm right here.
Oh, your video feed left the screen.
I changed the view mode to talker mode, speaker mode, or whatever. And I apologize for not having my camera.
Okay.
We moved, and the new house, the old house, has got the camera still. I'm grabbing it this weekend.
Jake,
I don't
if
have
you
mine.
lost 1 10 millimeter in 19 years, you don't work on shit enough. I'm just going to say it.
I don't work on anything, and I've lost more than that.
Dude, I think I lost 2 10
I
millimeters
lost-
today. I had to go find it.
I know. I was going to say, I lost like 3 of them the other day.
It's Bluetooth. They found it.
Bluetooth 10 mils?
Hey, that's an invention somebody needs to do. Have a beeper
Hey,
on that thing.
we had a,
Have
we had a-
a
You start
fucking
remote.
have a beacon in your 10 millimeters.
You just got to
We got
start putting
Bluetooth shop
RFID
vac.
in all of them.
Okay, here's how
so you can,
bad I
like,
am.
use tile.
I went to leave the shop today to get home so I could do the podcast, and I could not find my car keys. And I looked and I spent 20, 30 minutes looking for my car keys. I put them in my other pocket.
Joseph plus asked, and I'm going to refer this one over to Scott Clark because he's going to be the one with the most experience. When looking for a shop with, or maybe James, when looking for a shop with steady state tuning capable dynos, what am I looking for? What do I need to see on the dyno to know I'm using a proper dyno, basically?
James, take that one.
I guess it depends on the transmission in the car for one, but I mean, me personally, I like it to be able to track a commanded RPM. and that the RPM pickup on the dyno is stable enough to actually monitor it and control the eddy brake off of that.
And not just a line on the marketing brochure, James, but actually does it?
It's
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're steady state at 2,400 RPMs, you know, on a 400 wheel horsepower car, and you're sitting there holding it wide open throttle at 2,400 RPMs, it should not blow through the eddy brake
Yeah.
after 30, 40 seconds of being there. So,
Yeah.
and if it does, it's not a true steady state dyno, in my opinion.
So to be clear with that as well, you're not controlling the RPM itself. You're actually controlling the wheel speed. It's resisting the wheel, so it's controlling mile an hour. You're not holding the engine physically back. Your converter will make a difference in that, because if you have a loose converter, 2,400 RPM trying to hold it there, you're not getting that. You're going to get a mile an hour that it's going to hold it at, and it's your pedal is going to be dependent on what you get for the RPM.
No,
so
mine
the
actually-
You're not
dyno
controlling
actually-
ignition on the dyno.
No, it actually holds the actual
I can
engine
accelerate
RPM.
through it. I can rev my converter. I can rev my engine. The converter is going to go up.
I think
Until
you're
it hits that point where it
misunderstanding what I'm
couples.
saying. That's why I said it depends on what transmission you have.
Yes,
And
correct.
Gotcha.
The
Gotcha.
engine target is still like on my dyno. I have a dyno dynamics, for instance.
It'll do RPM target
And-
as well as wheel speed target,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yes,
And now-
it'll
like-
actually it'll try to attempt to hold it at a steady state RPM that you have commanded. But if, say for instance, you have a like today, I've got a 2010 Camaro on the dyno that's got a turbo 400 in it with a loosey goosey PTC converter. If I try to hold the thing at 2,400 RPMs, of course you start stalling the stall converter up, it's going to blow through that. So, but it'll attempt to actually pull the wheel
it back
speed down.
Yeah.
It'll pull the wheel speed all the way down to almost zero to try to get that thing to pull
Yeah,
the engine back down. But it obviously you
Right.
get to a limitation on what
We
the
put a
converter will
CVT
actually
car
pull
on
it
a
down.
dyno dynamics, and we're able to hold. Not given this is a CVT Formula SE car that made 60, 70 horsepower, but even on the CVT, unless we were loading up really, really weird, we could get the thing to hold RPM.
But yes, in a nutshell, if you've got a automatic transmission that has a lockup converter, or you have a manual transmission, I like to see target RPM so that you can actually load at a
So,
specific RPM
yeah.
point to do
you're
your
on a
timing and fuel
manual-
tables.
If you're on a manual, for the most part, like Mustang, like the older Mustangs only do wheel speed unless I've been missing something in the software, and it's okay. But yeah, it's definitely nice. I use the RPM holding a lot. The thing I like to see too is if you're in a street car with a lot of transients or some different loading, to be able to do a % load of the eddy brake. Because I know like the Superflow doesn't really do that. So when you're trying to tune, some drivability stuff, I'll say like off our dyno jet at the shop now, which doesn't do any load control, which is why I'm driving to Ohio in 2.5 weeks to go pick up my dyno. But I have more time taking the car off the dyno and tuning in drivability stuff because I can't do it that way. And I've had the same problem on dynos where I can't command a % load and tune some of those areas. Some of the if you really, you don't want to sit there and hold it steady state in some areas for 30, 40 seconds all the time. So I think the biggest thing is making sure you got the control you need.
Yeah, the key to it is when you're looking for a dyno, you need something that can hold it for any duration and can hold it at a number, whether it's RPM, speed, no matter what it is, it needs to just be able to hold it. If it increases, when you tell it, I want you to hold it 2,500 RPM, I want you to hold it 5,000 RPM, I want you to hold it 40 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, whatever that is, if it can't hold that number no matter what you do to it, with the exception that there's a limit to how much you can actually limit if you put too much power into something, then that's where you wonder if it's a decent dyno. If it can't hold it somewhere else, find somebody else who's been on that dyno before you and ask them the questions like that. Can I sit on your dyno and make it hold my car at X speed or X RPM for 20 seconds, 30 seconds?
I will say one other thing to look at if you are shopping for a dyno shop is proper ventilation, because if you're steady stating a car at, any kind of load at all. It's going to put out a lot of exhaust, and the number one thing that will completely screw up a tune on a car
Sucking its own exhaust.
Yes, EGR and obviously heat. So you have to have proper ventilation and proper fans to keep the heat off the car.
And a shop fan or a single carpet blower, probably not going to be enough.
Yeah.
And
So I think,
and if you got a car that you're doing, if you're doing alcohol, make sure you have proper ventilation masks. Because in a room where you don't have quite enough flow, you're going to be sucking those fumes, and it gets painful after a while. You can go literally to Harbor Freight and buy masks that are made to handle the vapors and breathe just fine. Your eyes will still burn because you don't have protection for your eyes, but you can close your eyes long enough that you can still breathe if their ventilation isn't quite up.
I've put goggles on the dyno before, not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, totally. Swimming goggles is the way to go with alcohol. If you can't do anything else, at least do that.
Yeah,
man, that twin turbo 427 that we did at our class here last time that Scott was down. I mean, I've got almost 40. I've got 40,000 CFM of airflow coming through that one bay.
Wow.
And it'll still make you tear up. Yeah.
I like James's ventilation though. James has good ventilation. I like his. One of my favorite setups.
It's always good to have It's always good to have a dyno that gives you both fresh intake air and pulling the exhaust out of it at the same time. If they have at least one fan, you're better than zero fans. But if you have a closed off bay and they're pulling in fresh air and pushing out the exhaust out the other side, that's always better than nothing.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is good ventilation. Know what kind of pickup they have, speed or RPM, and depending on your setup, like obviously the speed input on a CVT or a really loose converter won't work. That's where you need a good RPM pickup that works, unlike some dynos. And then, just make sure that you can ask them how they can command their dyno, which, I can tell you Mustang, Dyno Dynamics, Dyno Tech, which is the little baby Dyno Dynamics. If you're not trying to steady state more than like 600-700 horsepower, or sweep over at 1,300 or something like that. And then some of the mainline, I know the mainline hub dynos have pretty good control. The hub dynos I'm not as familiar with. The mainline
the new dyno jets with the eddy brake works pretty good.
On the hub dyno for a mainline, I probably wouldn't even attempt to even hop on one of those things unless you're making 1,200 plus horsepower, in my opinion.
Right.
I mean,
that's the only reason we had to go use it is when we were doing drift cars that were just way too aggressive, or where the diff sat so low that it would actually contact the bed of my dyno during a pull.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a stupid rules thing that caused in some chassis the diff hangs really low, and I literally pick the tires up off the dyno.
Jeez.
Between that and running really soft rear springs, and
Mark turned into the dog cam.
Would you guys like to see 0 to 200 faster than a Bewley twin turbo?
Yes.
Yes. This is hilarious.
Okay.
Lindsay dog. Hey, would you like to? You don't care.
Yep.
What do you want? What do you want to do? What? All right.
That was great. Mine's over here passed completely the fuck out. He's 11-year-old Weimaraner. He's like, he don't get up for much. Ugh.
I've been screwing with her for. I've been screwing with her for like the last 20 minutes, and she's not as wound up as she was. But
that's hilarious.
As soon as my wife goes to bed, my pit mix walks in the room, looks at her till she puts a pillow on the floor so she can sleep next to my wife.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah. I walk in and she's like, why do you call this dog spoiled? I was like, seriously?
Oh, I wonder why.
Well, we got any other questions?
Now she's looking at me like, are you going to take me outside or not, Dad?
Oh, you said the O word.
Both chats are winding down a little bit right now.
Yep. Everybody knows it's about time. Come to our classes. Sign up for the online class. It's at RealTuners.com. We're going to try and make that more of a thing because it looks like this COVID-19 thing is a huge pain in the ass. Yes, Jerry, I am a Weimaraner guy, big time. But no, yeah, just try to show up and check out the online classes. We're going to work really hard at making those work over towards later in the year here. I think that's going to be our winter project, is trying to get some useful stuff up online, some short and inexpensive things. Our webinars have been a huge hit, but they're kind of long in the tooth. I'd like to shorten things down and see what we can do. But anyway, we're going to give it our best shot to the live stream here, and it should be pretty entertaining so far. We're putting a lot of effort into it. So anybody else got anything they want to say?
I don't think so. I'm reading. Check both.
Reading?
I see nothing.
Anything?
Lynn, get Rick Fox in one of those classes. Rick Fox is talking LS stuff. He needs one of those classes, Lynn.
Yep.
Just remember to be safe. If you're using COVID injectors, wear a mask.
Yes. Don't worry, you won't make it powered. All right, you guys. My host has been helping us out for 3 years now on this stuff. Totally cool having these guys to help. Yeah. So again, come check out the classes weekend after next in Royce City. I'll be down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And it should be pretty badass too. There's some really neat stuff. We don't tune Toyotas at my class. We actually tune real race cars. So come check it out. If not, check it out online. Love hearing from you guys. Everyone else, take care, and we'll see you